Hi everyone, my name is Donto Duxworth, and today I'm going to be interviewing a Mr. Stephen Morris about his life and how it was affected after the Vietnam War. The war took place between 1965 and 1975, and it took place between North and South Korea, and the U.S. had got involved. With the U.S.'s involvement, of course, it had some effects on our country and our citizens. Now, Mr. Stephen Morris has been in my life since I could remember, since I was a baby. He's a family friend, but more like a father figure of mine, so we're just going to ask him a little bit about how his life was. So how was your life before the war had struck?
Before the war had struck, I was a normal child growing up. Pretty much having fun and just doing my thing as a child until we got word that we're going to Nam.
What was the word?
The word was President Johnson had just told the United States that we will be going to war in Vietnam.
Do you remember where you were, how you felt at that time you had received that message?
I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah. And it really didn't bother me that much because I knew that, oh well, I'm not going to go. And I was watching all my friends that I knew that were 19 and more going, and it was like, I want to go too.
Really? You were one of the people that wanted to go?
I wanted to go too.
Wow. See, I don't think I would have been one of those people. How old were you around this time?
I was 18.
18?
On my
fresh
way.
Young lad?
Out of high school.
Did you have any plans, or were you worried about the war?
Well, when you're young like that, you're not worried about the war because you think you're invincible. And you basically, at 18, wanted to get out your mom's house.
Okay.
So,
okay. I understand that.
So,
yes. So when the war had started, there was a little bit of civil rights going on as well. Do you think that affected you along with that? Or do you think that since the civil rights going, more black teenagers such as yourself have wanted to go to war just to be a part of America? Not saying they weren't, but you get what I'm saying? Like after the equality had been given, do you think it was a bigger right for you to go into the war or to stay home and do what you plan to do?
For me, war was new. This Vietnam was new and it was fresh, and seeing these guys go over and come back in their uniforms, and then you would see them walking the streets, and you were like, I want to get one of them uniforms.
Okay.
And the only way to get that uniform
was to go. Okay. See, now certain people say that the soldiers that come home, they were treated better or held higher. Do you believe that? Like the nation changed a bit?
No.
How do you feel like the soldiers were treated as they came?
See, Vietnam was, as far as I'm concerned, after you got the knowledge of just what the war was about, it was a war that we should not have been in. Guys came back from Nam, and instead of honoring them, they pretty much downgraded them. Yeah, because it was a thing whereas most Americans thought that you're killing innocent people. Back in the 60s, it was flower power, Woodstock, and most of that generation was against the war.
Okay.
So they really didn't look up to soldiers coming back in their fresh uniforms, just off the battlefield, and serving their country. They thought once they came back, they would be honored, but they were dishonored.
Okay. So when you say the generation had not held them or treated them properly, do you mean like the older generation or your generation back then, the younger generation?
The younger generation.
Okay.
This also was the era of the baby boomers.
Oh, okay. So okay.
So we were into flower power and everything else that went with that era. But the Vietnam War was something that they just did not condone.
Okay. So how do you think your parents or elders that were in your life, would you say they had different views than you did of the war?
Everyone had their own view on the war. The elderly, the young, those in between. everybody had their own view. Some was for it, some was against it. My parents, I really don't think it bothered them because they pretty much was raising a family, and especially for my father, if he was pretty much past that age of recruitment.
Okay.
Where they're recruiting, so it pretty much didn't faze him, except that he dealt with the economy and what it took to keep his family secure.
Okay. Did he want any of his children? Did he want to encourage you to go in, or was it just like that's what's going on? Whoever gets involved, get involved. As far as my family, I want to take care of them, keep them safe. Or was it I have young men that I want to go and be proud of?
See, with that also, Dantel, fathers and mothers, parents weren't encouraging their children to go into that war. Pretty much like maybe those that had fought in World War II, World War I, world wars before the Vietnam era, and their families were pretty much tied to the military, then they would pretty much encourage their children, oh yeah, you have to go in so that you can keep up the family tradition of the military. But simple families that was not really for the war, there was no, well, you need to go. You should go into the military. It was none of that.
Okay. No. So to transition into when the war had been going on for a while, because it's about a 10-year war. Around like the middle of the war, did it change? Do you feel like it changed the nation in a way? Like, was there adjusting that you had to get used to, or do you think like the world got used to just simply because so much money was being put into the war?
The United States had to get used to what money they were using to support this war. And as far as it goes for the economy, we were scraping the scarf also.
Okay. So, did that bring personal changes in your lifestyle, or you noticed that change in the lifestyles around you?
It pretty much didn't change anyone's lifestyle. It just made people adjust to what was going on and just accept it because there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay. Now I have to ask you your personal opinion, because some people are so, even the government's a little like, we did not lose this war. How do you feel? Do you feel like we wouldn't lose? The personal opinion of someone who lived through it, because I know it varies.
Most people call it the Vietnam War. I wouldn't call it a war. I call Vietnam, it was a conflict. Did we win this war? No, we didn't win this war. We suffered severely from this war with our troops that was over there. What went on back here in the United States, for those that condoned the war, they wouldn't have nothing to do with it because we shouldn't have been there.
Okay.
I don't think we should have went and did what we did over there, because it was pretty much going into a foreign country and trying to fight a war on land you know nothing about. Impossible. Those guys had such strategies that our American soldiers knew nothing about. We had to adapt to what was going on over there, and it was pretty much a losing battle from beginning to end.
To kind of bring up, like you said, you saw so many people like getting so ready to go to war. Did you have any like personal buddies that had went and came back and you saw a change in them?
I sure have. Yeah, I sure did. I seen Carl. He was a friend of ours. He used to date my sister, my older sister.
Okay.
And he came over one day, and he was like, well, I'll be going to Vietnam in a couple of days. I'm like, what? For real? What happened? He got drafted.
Okay.
So,
how was he before he had went before the draft? Was he excited to go? What can you remember about Carl before war?
Carl was a musician. We had, back in the 60s, we had our neighborhood bands and what have you. And, I mean, he was a pretty talented guy before he went to Nam.
Afterwards.
And when Carl came back from Nam, Carl just wasn't the same anymore.
What had happened?
Carl had just started using drugs. I don't know if he started over there. I'm pretty sure he started over there. When Carl came back, Carl, you seen the big difference in how he used from when, put it like this, before and after, it was like he was totally messed up.
Okay.
He was totally messed up.
On the sides of drugs he had turned to, I know marijuana and heroin were very prominent. Was he using those? Did you have any?
Oh, definitely. Carl went from one drug to the other drug to drinking to just basically losing his mind. Yeah.
Wow.
It was sad. It really was.
Did it, after the war and you'd seen your friends come home, did it change your values, or were there any certain things that were instilled in you or any looks on life that would change within you as a person from these events and just living through them?
Seeing these guys come home and seeing what Nam had done to them, it completely changed my outlook, because I didn't want to look like how they looked. They were totally, as far as I'm concerned, they were a mess. Those guys, the only thing that was on their minds was, I got to have this and I got to have that. It wasn't anything about trying to function sociably, because most of the guys were pretty much going to hospitals to get help, which, as far as I'm concerned, America gave them no help.
None. Why? What makes you say that?
Well, the veteran hospitals, they pretty much kept them doped up and what have you, so that they could get through society on top of already being doped up.
Do you believe they were feeding their addiction, or
Yes.
trying to take care of them? Just feeding their addiction?
Just feeding their addiction.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Okay. So, as you adjusted to people coming home and the war being over, how did your life change afterwards?
Well, after these guys came home and what have you, I went in. And it was like pretty much a fresh start for me. Because like I said, I wanted out of my mom's house. So, you know, after seeing these guys come home, and now the military was pretty much transitioning into a no war world. Everything's at peace now. And once everything was at peace, when I went into the military, it was pretty much, come on, build a life for yourself now.
Okay.
That's pretty much how it was.
And that's how you've been doing it ever since?
Ever
building
since.
a life for yourself?
Just building a life for myself.
Alrighty, well, there you have it. That was Mr. Stephen Morris and his life. I see my time is coming to an end. Before I go, I would like to thank my best friend, Elena Marie Reeser, for recording this video for me.
Hi!
I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. Thank you.